The fluorescent lights in the Secure Card Financial Services call center hummed at a frequency that most people stopped noticing after a few weeks. Michael Brennan had worked here for 8 years, and he still noticed, still heard the 60 Hz drone beneath the constant murmur of 200 voices, the clicking of keyboards, the synthetic chime that signaled incoming calls. He noticed everything. That was the problem. That was the gift. It was 8:47 a.m. on a Thursday in March, and Michael sat in cubicle 47, his assigned workspace for the past 8 years, positioned in the middle of the floor where the air conditioning worked best and the supervisor's line of sight was partially blocked by a support pillar. He wore a headset that pressed against his temples with the familiar weight of 10,000 hours. His screens glowed with customer data, fraud alerts, transaction histories. His fingers rested on the keyboard, ready. The Phoenix sun was already brutal outside, 83 degrees and climbing. But inside the call center, it was a permanent 68 degrees, the temperature calibrated for maximum productivity, according to some study that HR had cited years ago. The air smelled of industrial carpet cleaner and the ghost of burned coffee from the break room. 200 people breathed the same recycled air, spoke the same scripted phrases, followed the same protocols. Michael's phone chimed. Incoming call. He clicked accept. Thank you for calling Secure Card Fraud Protection. My name is Michael. May I have your name and the last 4 digits of your card number? The voice on the other end was male, middle-aged, irritated. Yeah, someone used my card at a gas station in Nevada. I've never been to Nevada. Michael pulled up the account, saw the charge, $87.43 at a Chevron in Reno, posted yesterday. Saw the pattern immediately. Small test charge, checking if the card worked before the real fraud began. I see the charge, Mr. Patterson. I'm going to mark this as fraudulent and issue you a new card. Before I do that, I'd like to check a few other things. Do you see any other charges you don't recognize, particularly small ones under $10? Let me look. Pause. Actually, yeah, there's a $1.07 charge at something called Digital Services LLC. I don't know what that is. That's a verification charge. Fraudsters use small transactions to confirm the card is active before making larger purchases. I'm flagging both charges and canceling your card. You should receive a new one in 3 to 5 business days. How did you know to ask about the small charge? Experience. Is there anything else I can help you with today? The call ended. Total duration, 3 minutes 42 seconds. Michael documented the case, flagged the account for monitoring, and moved on. His average handle time was 4.2 minutes, the lowest in the department. His first call resolution rate was 94%, the highest. These metrics made him valuable, even if nobody quite understood why a 54-year-old man with graying hair and the quiet demeanor of someone who'd seen too much was so extraordinarily good at this job. The morning passed in its familiar rhythm. Calls came in, one after another. Lost cards, disputed charges, account lockouts, the endless parade of small financial anxieties that defined modern life. Most calls were routine. A customer saw a charge they didn't recognize, which turned out to be a subscription they'd forgotten about. A card was declined because the customer was traveling and hadn't notified the bank. A parent discovered their teenager had been using the card for in-game purchases. But some calls were different. Some calls were people in the middle of being robbed. At 10:15 a.m., Michael took a call from a man in Ohio who'd given his card number to someone claiming to be from Microsoft tech support. The support agent had remote access to his computer right now, supposedly fixing a virus. Michael recognized the scam instantly. The fake virus warnings, the remote access software, the support fee that would be followed by drained accounts. Sir, I need you to listen carefully. The person on your computer is not from Microsoft. Microsoft never calls customers directly. You need to disconnect from the remote session immediately and shut down your computer. But they said there's a virus. There's no virus. They're going to steal your money. Shut down your computer. Right now. The man did. Michael walked him through the next steps, changing passwords, monitoring accounts, filing a police report. The whole call took 23 minutes. That was 17 minutes longer than company policy recommended. Supervisor David Mercer would probably flag it during his weekly review. Again, Michael didn't care. the man's accounts were safe. That was what mattered. At 11:30, Michael took his first break, 15 minutes in the break room, which was exactly like every other corporate break room in America. Vending machines, microwave, refrigerator covered in passive-aggressive notes about labeling your food, a television playing news that nobody watched. He poured himself a cup of coffee. Terrible, but free, and sat at the corner table where he could see the whole room without being in anyone's direct line of sight. Carmen Reyes found him there. Carmen was 34, a team lead who'd transferred to the fraud department 6 months ago. She was smart, ambitious, and observant, in ways that made Michael slightly uncomfortable. She noticed things about him that he'd rather she didn't notice. "Mind if I sit?" Michael gestured to the chair across from him. Carmen sat, setting down her own coffee cup. "You were on that Microsoft scam call for 23 minutes. Customer needed help. Policy says document the fraud attempt, advise the customer to contact local authorities, and disconnect. That's a 5-minute call, max. Policy doesn't save people's money." Carmen studied him. She had a way of looking at people that suggested she was cataloging information, building a profile. It reminded Michael of analysts he'd worked with years ago. Good analysts, the kind who saw patterns everyone else missed. "Brennan, I pulled your metrics yesterday. You've been here 8 years. Longest tenure in the department by about 5 years. Highest resolution rate. Lowest handle time on standard calls. But your complex calls run long because you actually solve problems instead of just documenting them. Is that a criticism?" "It's an observation." She leaned forward. "You're overqualified for this job. Massively overqualified. The way you diagnose fraud patterns, the way you understand financial systems, that's not something you learn in call center training." Michael said nothing, sipped his coffee. "What did you do before this?" "Finance. Long time ago." "What kind of finance?" Michael looked at her, decided how much to reveal, decided on the minimum. "The kind that doesn't exist anymore." Carmen waited for more. Michael didn't offer it. After a moment, she stood. Morning briefing mentioned a surge in IRS scams. New variant, they're keeping victims on the phone continuously, preventing them from calling anyone who might talk sense into them. Average loss is $50,000. I've seen the pattern. Mercer emphasized protocol. Document and disconnect. Don't engage. I heard him. He's watching you, Brennan. 2 of your calls got flagged last week for excessive engagement. I was helping customers. You were providing financial guidance. That's not our job. She picked up her coffee. Just be careful. I'd hate to lose the best agent in the department because you couldn't follow rules. She walked away. Michael sat alone with his terrible coffee and thought about rules. He'd followed rules for 10 years at his previous job. Written reports, filed warnings, escalated concerns through proper channels. Followed every rule, every protocol, every corporate procedure. And then the world had collapsed anyway. The afternoon brought more calls. A woman whose identity had been stolen. Her credit cards used to buy $3,000 worth of electronics in Miami. A man who'd clicked on a phishing email and given away his login credentials. An elderly couple whose account showed suspicious transfers to an overseas account they'd never heard of. Michael handled them all. Documented, advised, protected what could be protected. The ones he could save, he saved. The ones who had already lost everything, and there were always some of those, he tried to guide toward recovery. At 2:30 p.m., Carmen appeared at his cubicle again. "Got a minute?" Michael nodded. She pulled up a chair, kept her voice low. "I've been curious about you since I transferred here. Finally did some digging." Michael's stomach tightened. "Digging?" "Googled your name. Found some interesting results." He waited. Michael Brennan, VP of Fraud Detection at Lehman Brothers, 2003 to 2008, published 3 internal reports warning about systemic risks in mortgage-backed securities, testified before Congress during the bankruptcy investigation. Michael closed his eyes briefly. That was a long time ago. You were a vice president at one of the biggest investment banks in the world. You literally testified before Congress. And now you're working in a call center in Phoenix? Taking fraud calls for $15 an hour. $16.50. I got a raise. Brennan, what happened? Michael was quiet for a long moment. The call center hummed around them. 200 voices, the click of keyboards, the drone of fluorescent lights. a world away from the marble lobbies and glass towers of his previous life. You know what happened. Everyone knows what happened. The crash. The crash. He turned to look at her. I worked in fraud detection. My job was to identify problems in the mortgage applications we were packaging into securities. I was good at it. Too good, maybe. I saw the patterns. Inflated appraisals, falsified income statements, applications approved with no documentation whatsoever. And you reported it? I wrote reports. Lots of reports. Beautiful, detailed, thoroughly documented reports about systemic fraud in our lending pipeline. I sent them to my supervisors. I escalated to senior leadership. I even got a meeting with the chief risk officer. What happened? Nothing. Nothing happened. Michael's voice was flat, controlled, the voice of someone who'd told this story to himself 1,000 times. They thanked me for my thoroughness. They assured me the models showed the assets were performing. They pointed to the rating agencies, which gave everything AAA ratings. They told me to keep doing my job and let the economists worry about the big picture. But you were right. I was right. And it didn't matter. He looked at the screen in front of him, at the customer data, the fraud alerts, the small individual problems he spent his days solving. September 2008, the whole thing came down. $600 billion in assets, gone overnight. 25,000 employees, people I worked with, people who trusted the company, carrying boxes to the street. You tried to warn them. Trying isn't the same as succeeding. I stayed. I took the salary. I told myself I was doing what I could from inside the system. And then the system collapsed, and I realized I'd been complicit the whole time. Carmen was quiet for a moment. The congressional testimony, what was that about? Investigators found my reports, the ones nobody listened to. They wanted to know why I didn't do more, why I didn't go public, why I didn't quit in protest. His laugh was bitter. I didn't have good answers. I still don't. So you came here, to a call center. Couldn't go back to finance. Couldn't sit in those boardrooms again, writing reports that nobody reads, making decisions that destroy communities. But I couldn't leave the industry entirely. It's all I know. He gestured at his screen. This is different. Small stakes, individual people. When I save someone from a scam, I know I did something real. When I fail, it's one person's loss, not the global economy. Is that enough? After what you used to do? Michael considered the question. It has to be enough. Because it's the only thing that lets me sleep at night. The afternoon wore on. More calls, more problems, more small victories and small defeats. At 3 p.m., the floor supervisor, David Mercer, called a brief meeting, unusual for mid-shift, which meant something was wrong. Listen up, Mercer said, standing at the front of the department. He was 45, thick around the middle, with the perpetually stressed expression of someone who lived and died by metrics he couldn't control. We've had a surge in IRS impersonation scams this week. 3 customers have lost significant amounts in the last 48 hours. Murmurs from the agents. They all knew about IRS scams, but significant amounts usually meant 5 figures or more. The new variant is particularly aggressive. Scammers pose as IRS criminal investigation. Claim the victim owes back taxes. Threaten immediate arrest if payment isn't made. They keep victims on the phone continuously, sometimes for hours, while walking them through wire transfers. What's the average loss? Someone asked. $40,000 to $75,000. Gasps. That was retirement money. Life savings. Here's what I need from you, Mercer continued. These situations are active crime scenes. Your job is to document the fraud attempt. Advise the customer to hang up on the scammers and contact local law enforcement, then disconnect and escalate to our investigation team. That's it. Document, advise, disconnect. What if the transfer is happening in real time? The question came from a young agent near the front. Doesn't matter. We are not authorized to provide financial guidance or direct customer actions. That exposes the company to liability. If a customer loses money after we tell them what to do, they can sue us. Mercer scanned the room. His eyes landed on Michael. Document, advise, disconnect. No exceptions. The meeting ended. Agents returned to their desks. Michael sat in his chair, staring at his screen, thinking about all the people who would call today terrified and confused. people who would be told to hang up and call the police while their life savings disappeared into accounts in Eastern Europe. Document, advise, disconnect. It was the same logic as Lehman. Protect the institution, manage the liability, let the disaster happen to someone else. Michael had followed that logic once, had watched it destroy the world economy. He wasn't sure he could follow it again. The call came at 2:47 p.m. Michael's screen showed the incoming flag, Priority Active Fraud Concern. He clicked accept, heard the soft chime that meant the call was connecting, and then there was a voice on the line. Hello? Is this the credit card company? Female, elderly, trembling. Yes, ma'am. This is Secure Card Fraud Protection. My name is Michael. How can I help with today? I got an alert on my phone. It said unusual activity on my account. I don't understand what's happening. Michael was already pulling up her information. Dorothy Chen, 78 years old, Scottsdale address. Customer since 2015. Good payment history. Credit limit of $60,000. And there it was, a pending transaction flag. Wire transfer, $49,500. Destination, Baltic International Bank, Estonia. Status, pending. Processing deadline, 4 p.m. EST. Michael's blood went cold. Mrs. Chen, I see the alert you're referring to. Can you tell me about this wire transfer? The one for $49,500. If you owed taxes, you'd receive letters in the mail. You'd have time to respond. They would never demand immediate wire transfers to offshore accounts. A shadow fell across his cubicle. Michael looked up to see David Mercer standing there, arms crossed, face tight with anger. Mercer pointed at his own headset, then at Michael. He was monitoring the call. Michael turned slightly away, lowering his voice but not stopping. Mrs. Chen, I need you to hang up on the other caller, right now. They said if I hang up, they lied. Everything they've told you is a lie. Please, hang up on them. Mercer leaned into Michael's cubicle. Brennan, what the hell are you doing? Michael muted his headset for a moment. Active scam in progress. She's about to lose $50,000. Then document it and disconnect. That's protocol. The transfer is pending right now. Processing deadline is 4:00 p.m. If I disconnect, she loses everything. That's not our problem. We're not financial advisors. I'm not advising her on finances. I'm telling her she's being robbed. You're directing customer actions. You're exposing the company to liability. Mercer's voice was rising. Other agents were starting to look. End the call, now. No, the word hung in the air. Michael had never refused a direct order before. 8 years of quiet compliance, broken in a single syllable. I will terminate this call from my console. Then do it. And when the recording surfaces, you can explain to PR why you forced an agent to abandon a 78-year-old woman while criminals stole her retirement savings. Mercer's face went red, but he didn't reach for his console. Michael unmuted. Mrs. Chen, are you still there? I'm here. Her voice was smaller now, frightened. I hung up on them. The IRS people. I hung up. Good. That was very brave. Now we're going to save your money. Michael's fingers flew across his keyboard, pulling up banking protocols, wire transfer procedures, cancellation windows. The clock in the corner of his screen read 3:14 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. 46 minutes until the transfer finalized. Mrs. Chen, I need you to go to your computer. Are you at your computer? Yes, I'm still here, from when they had me do the transfer. Good. I need you to open a new browser window. Not the tab the scammers had you use, a completely new window. Type in your bank's address yourself. Don't click any links. He heard keys clicking on her end, slow, uncertain, the typing of someone who wasn't comfortable with technology. Okay, I'm at the login page. Log into your account. Tell me when you can see your transactions. More clicking. A long pause. I'm in. I see the wire transfer. It says pending. Good, that's good. Do you see a button that says cancel transaction or stop payment? Yes, there's a cancel button. But when I click it, she paused. It wants a confirmation code. That code was sent to your email or phone. Check your messages. Silence. Then, I don't see any code in my email. Wait, oh no. What is it? The IRS people. They asked me to read them a code earlier. They said it was for verification. I didn't know. The scammers had already intercepted the confirmation code. They'd used her own security protocol against her, locking out the cancellation before she even knew she needed it. Michael's mind raced. There had to be another way. Mrs. Chen, listen to me. We're going to contact your bank directly. They can stop the transfer on their end. Do you see a customer service number on your bank's website? Yes, there's a number, but I don't. I'm already on the phone with you. I'm going to stay on the line. You're going to call your bank on your other phone, the one you used to talk to the scammers. Put them on speaker so I can hear. I don't know how to do speakerphone. That's okay. I'll walk you through it. Mercer appeared again, Carmen behind him this time. Mercer's face was a mask of barely contained fury. Brennan, you've been on this call for 32 minutes. You're providing step-by-step financial guidance. You're directing her to call another institution. This is so far beyond protocol. David. Carmen's voice was quiet but firm. Let him work. This is my department, and this call is being recorded. Which means if you force him to stop and this woman loses $50,000, there's going to be a very uncomfortable conversation with legal about why we actively prevented an agent from stopping a crime in progress. Mercer stared at her, then at Michael, then back at her. Fine, but this goes in his file. And yours. He walked away. Carmen gave Michael a small nod and took up position at the edge of his cubicle, running interference. Michael turned back to his call. Mrs. Chen, I need you to pick up your other phone, the one you hung up on the scammers with. Okay, I have it. Now I'm going to give you a number to call. Your bank's fraud hotline. When they answer, you need to tell them exactly what I tell you. Can you do that? I think so. I'll try. You're doing great. You're being so brave. He gave her the number. Heard her dial. Heard the automated menu. The hold music. The eternal wait that was bank customer service. The clock read 3:31 p.m. 29 minutes. Mrs. Chen, while you're waiting, I want you to repeat after me. When someone answers, say exactly these words. I need to report an unauthorized wire transfer under duress. I need to cancel it immediately. Unauthorized wire transfer under duress. Cancel immediately. Good. The word duress is important. It triggers their emergency protocols. The hold music continued. Michael watched the clock. 3:33, 3:34, 3:35. Someone's answering, Mrs. Chen said. Michael listened. He could faintly hear the bank representative through Mrs. Chen's phone. Distant, tinny, but audible. My name is Dorothy Chen. I need to report an unauthorized wire transfer under duress. I need to cancel it immediately. The bank rep started asking questions. Account number, date of birth, last four of Social Security, verification questions designed to prove identity. Mrs. Chen answered them all, her voice steadier now. She was fighting back, taking control. I initiated a wire transfer this morning for $49,500. I was being scammed. The criminals posed as the IRS. I need to cancel the transfer before it goes through. More questions, more verification. Michael could hear the bank rep typing, pulling up records. 3:42 p.m. 18 minutes. Mrs. Chen, the bank rep said. Michael could hear clearly now. I've located the transfer. It's flagged for processing at 4 p.m. I'm placing an immediate hold and initiating our fraud review protocol. Does that mean, is my money safe? The transfer has been stopped. We'll need you to come into a branch to complete some paperwork. But your funds are secure. Mrs. Chen started crying. Thank you. Thank you so much. Oh, thank you. Michael let out a breath he hadn't known he was holding. 3:44 p.m. 16 minutes to spare. Mrs. Chen, are you still there? I'm here. Her voice was thick with tears. The bank said the transfer is stopped. Is it really over? It's over. Your money is safe. I don't know how to thank you. I don't. That money is everything I have. My husband and I saved for 40 years. He passed last year. That was our retirement. Our whole life. I'm just glad I could help. No. You don't understand. Those people, the scammers, they made me feel so stupid. So ashamed. They had me convinced I was a criminal, that I'd made some terrible mistake, that I deserved to be punished. And you believed me. You helped me. Michael thought about all the calls he'd taken over 8 years, all the people he'd helped, all the money he'd saved, all the small victories that had slowly rebuilt something inside him that Lehman Brothers had destroyed. "You're not stupid, Mrs. Chen. These criminals are professionals. They do this every day. They know exactly how to manipulate people, and they don't care who they hurt. How did you know? How did you know exactly what to do? The confirmation codes, the bank protocols, the duress language. You knew everything." Michael hesitated. Behind him, he could feel Carmen listening. "I worked in fraud detection before this job. I studied how financial crimes work. You must have been very good at it." "I wasn't good enough when it mattered most, but I'm trying to be better now." The call with Dorothy Chen ended at 3:58 p.m. Total duration, 71 minutes. The longest call Michael had ever taken, by a factor of 3. Before he could even remove his headset, Mercer appeared. "Conference room, now." The conference room was small, just a table, 4 chairs, and a whiteboard nobody ever used. Mercer sat on one side. Michael sat on the other. Carmen slipped in behind them and took a position by the door. "Brennan, do you understand what you did today? I prevented a 78-year-old woman from losing her life savings. You violated every protocol this department has. Call duration limits, prohibition on financial guidance, directing customer actions, engaging with third-party financial institutions. Would you prefer I had followed protocol? That's not the point. It's exactly the point. If I'd followed protocol, Dorothy Chen would be $50,000 poorer right now. Scammers in Estonia would be $50,000 richer, and we'd have a well-documented case file that we could feel good about while she spent her remaining years in poverty. The protocol exists to protect the company. The protocol exists because your lawyers are more afraid of lawsuits than they are of doing the wrong thing. I've seen this movie before. I know exactly how it ends." Mercer's eyes narrowed. "What does that mean?" Carmen stepped forward. "David, there's something you should know about Michael's background. Stay out of this, Reyes. He was a VP at Lehman Brothers, Vice President of Fraud Detection. He spent 5 years warning them about the mortgage crisis, and nobody listened." Silence in the room. Mercer stared at Michael. "Lehman Brothers? The bank that? The bank that collapsed and took the global economy with it." "Yes." Michael's voice was flat. "I wrote reports. I escalated concerns. I followed every protocol, every chain of command. I did everything right, and it didn't matter. The company went bankrupt. 25,000 people lost their jobs. The world economy went into freefall. What does that have to do with everything? It has everything to do with this." Michael leaned forward. "I watched protocol destroy the global financial system. I watched proper channels fail millions of people. I swore I'd never let that happen again. Not on my watch. Not when I could do something." "So you came to a call center?" "I came to a place where my actions actually matter, where following the rules or breaking them has immediate, visible consequences, where I can see the person I'm helping and know that I made a difference. And you think that gives you the right to ignore policy? I think policy should serve people, not the other way around. When the policy fails people, the policy is wrong." Mercer was quiet for a long moment. Then, "This goes to compliance. They'll make the final call on your employment status." "Fine. You'll be on administrative leave until they reach a decision." "Also fine." Michael stood. "But before you write me up, you should know that Mrs. Chen's daughter is a journalist. Dorothy already told her the whole story. By tomorrow, it'll be on social media, and it'll be obvious that Secure Card has 2 options. Celebrate the agent who saved an elderly woman, or fire him for doing the right thing. I wonder which narrative will play better." He walked out of the conference room. Carmen followed. That night, Michael sat in his apartment, a modest 1-bedroom in a Phoenix suburb, the kind of place that cost what his parking space at Lehman had cost, and waited for the other shoe to drop. His phone buzzed. Text from Carmen. Mrs. Chen's daughter posted on Twitter. 14,000 retweets and counting. He looked at the post, a thread detailing the whole story, the scam. The 71-minute call, the agent who broke every rule to save her mother's money. It was getting picked up by local news, by consumer advocacy groups, by people who'd lost loved ones' savings to similar scams and wished someone had done for them what Michael had done for Dorothy. His phone buzzed again. This time, a number he didn't recognize. "Hello? Mr. Brennan, this is Patricia Hendricks, Director of Consumer Relations at SecureCard. I'm calling about the Chen incident." "Here it comes," Michael thought. The polite termination, the carefully worded separation agreement. "I'm listening. We've reviewed the call recording and the social media response, and the 17 interview requests we've received in the last 3 hours." Interview requests? Apparently, call center agent defies corporate policy to save elderly woman is a compelling narrative. Who knew? Her tone was dry, but not hostile. "We're not firing you." Michael exhaled. "I see. In fact, we'd like to discuss an expanded role. Your expertise in fraud detection, your understanding of scam methodologies. It's become clear that our current protocols are inadequate for active fraud situations. We'd like you to help us develop better ones." "You want me to rewrite the rules?" "We want you to help us write rules that actually work. Rules that protect customers without exposing the company to undue liability." She paused. "You were right, Mr. Brennan. When policy fails people, the policy is wrong. We'd like your help fixing it." Michael looked around his apartment, at the sparse furniture, the secondhand decorations, the life he'd built from the wreckage of everything he'd lost. "I'd like that, but I have conditions." "Name them." "Any new protocol has to prioritize customer outcomes over liability protection. If there's a conflict between helping someone and covering our legal exposure, helping someone wins." Silence on the line. "Then, that's going to be a difficult sell to legal." "Then sell it. Show them the social media posts. Show them what happens when we do the right thing versus what happens when we don't. The liability of bad PR is worse than the liability of helping people." Another pause. "We'll discuss it. Can you come in tomorrow, say 10 a.m.? I'll be there." 3 months later, Michael walked into a conference room at SecureCard's corporate headquarters. The room was larger than the one where Mercer had tried to fire him. Actual windows, actual furniture, actual evidence that the company cared what happened there. The presentation on the screen read, "Operation Guardian, Active Fraud Intervention Protocol." His protocol. His rules. Built from 8 years of call center experience, 30 years of fraud expertise, and 71 minutes with Dorothy Chen that had changed everything. The room was full. Compliance officers, legal representatives, department heads, training supervisors. The people who would decide whether his protocol lived or died. "The current approach to active fraud situations is failing," Michael began. "We document, we advise, we disconnect, and customers lose billions of dollars every year because we're too afraid of liability to actually help them." He clicked to the next slide. Statistics, numbers, the mathematics of devastation. Elder fraud cost Americans $3.4 billion last year. The average victim loses between $25,000 and $75,000. Many lose their entire retirement savings. Some lose their homes. Some, he paused. Some don't survive the shame and despair. Another slide, the new protocol. Operation Guardian allows trained agents to intervene in active scam situations. Not to provide financial advice, but to provide fraud identification and remediation guidance. We teach customers to recognize scams, to contact their financial institutions properly, to use specific language that triggers emergency protocols. He walked through the details, the training program, the legal framework, the liability protections built into every step. We're not telling customers what to do with their money. We're telling them how to protect themselves from criminals who are actively stealing from them. There's a difference. The questions came fast, from legal, from compliance, from executives who'd spent their careers building walls between the company and its customers. Michael answered them all. He'd been preparing for these questions his whole career. 6 months after Dorothy Chen's call, Operation Guardian went live. The first month, agents trained in the new protocol intervened in 147 active scam situations. Total prevented losses, $2.3 million. The second month, 203 interventions, $3.1 million saved. By the end of the first year, 847 interventions, $4.7 million in prevented fraud losses. Michael read the reports from his new office, a real office with walls and a door, not a cubicle in a sea of cubicles. Director of Fraud Prevention Services, a title he'd never sought but couldn't refuse. The reports included letters from customers, People like Dorothy Chen, who'd been minutes away from losing everything and found themselves saved by an agent who'd been taught to actually help. One letter stood out. From the daughter of a man in Wisconsin who'd been targeted by a romance scam. The agent had stayed on the line for 43 minutes, walking him through the process of contacting his bank, freezing his accounts, protecting what remained of his savings. "My father served in Vietnam," the daughter wrote. "He survived things I can't imagine. But when those scammers got hold of him, he was like a child, confused, ashamed, certain that he'd done something unforgivable. Your agent treated him with dignity. She explained what was happening without making him feel stupid. She saved his money, but more than that, she saved his sense of himself. I don't know how to thank you. Just thank you." Michael kept that letter in his desk, next to the one from Dorothy Chen. The call from the FDIC came on a Tuesday afternoon, 14 months after the Dorothy Chen incident. "Mr. Brennan, this is Sarah Okonkwo with the Office of Consumer Protection. We've been reviewing your Operation Guardian protocol. Yes? We'd like to discuss implementing similar protocols industry-wide." Michael leaned back in his chair. "Industry-wide? Your results are impressive. $4.7 million in prevented losses in 1 year from a single company. If we could replicate that across the banking sector, you could prevent billions in elder fraud. That's the theory. We'd like your help making it reality." Michael thought about Lehman, about the reports nobody read, about the warnings nobody heeded, about watching the world collapse, while executives assured him the models showed everything was fine. This was different. This was people actually listening, actually wanting to help. What would that involve? "We're forming a task force. Industry representatives, consumer advocates, law enforcement. We want to develop federal guidelines for active fraud intervention. Your experience and expertise would be invaluable. I'm not a banker anymore. I'm a call center guy. You're someone who understands both sides, how financial systems work and how real people interact with them. That's exactly what we need." Michael looked around his office, at the plaques and certificates that had accumulated over the past year, at the letters from grateful customers, at the metrics showing lives saved, money protected, disasters averted. "Okay," he said, "I'll do it." 1 year later, the new federal guidelines were implemented across major financial institutions. Active fraud intervention standards, based on Operation Guardian, refined through months of collaboration, designed to empower frontline workers to actually help people instead of hiding behind protocol. The first-year results: estimated prevented losses of $780 million nationwide. Michael read the report in his office at the FDIC's Consumer Protection Division, a temporary assignment that had become permanent, a role he'd never imagined when he'd taken that call center job 8 years ago. His phone rang. Carmen Reyes. "Saw the annual report, $780 million. That's a lot of retirement savings." "It's a start." "A start? Brennan, you literally rewrote how the entire financial industry handles fraud. You prevented almost $1 billion in losses. Most people would call that a career. Most people didn't watch the last financial crisis happen while following protocol." Michael looked out his window at the Phoenix skyline. "I'm not done yet. What's next? Tech support scams, romance scams, investment fraud targeting retirees. There's a lot of ground to cover. You're going to fix all of it? I'm going to try, one scam at a time, one protocol at a time, one person at a time." He paused. "That's all I know how to do." That evening, Michael drove past the Secure Card building where he'd spent 8 years in Cubicle 47. The parking lot was full. Shift change, agents coming and going, the eternal churn of call center work. He thought about the version of himself who'd walked into that building for the first time, broken, ashamed, looking for penance, for redemption, for a way to matter that didn't require him to trust institutions that had already failed him. He'd found it, not in the grand gestures, not in the reports nobody read or the warnings nobody heeded, in the small moments, the individual calls, the people who needed help and found someone willing to give it. Dorothy Chen, the man in Wisconsin, the 847 families whose savings were protected because someone picked up the phone and cared. The scale was larger now, industry guidelines instead of individual calls, billions instead of thousands, but the principle was the same. Help people, one at a time. Make the difference you can make, where you can make it. Michael pulled into a gas station, filled his tank, drove home. Tomorrow there would be more work, more protocols to develop, more battles to fight, more systems to change. The scammers would adapt, develop new techniques, find new victims. The fight would never really be over. But that was okay. He didn't need it to be over. He just needed to keep fighting. The apartment was quiet when he arrived. He made dinner, something simple, healthy, the kind of meal he'd learned to cook after the divorce, when he had no one to cook for but himself. Ate at his small table, watching the Phoenix sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and red. His phone buzzed. A text from an old colleague, someone from the Lehman days who'd reached out after seeing the news coverage of Operation Guardian. Saw what you're doing, making a real difference. Proud of you. Michael stared at the message for a long moment. He thought about the Michael Brennan who'd written those reports at Lehman, who'd escalated concerns through proper channels, who'd believed that doing things the right way would lead to the right outcomes. That Michael had been naive, had learned the hard way that institutions don't protect people, people protect people. But that Michael had also been right. The fraud was real. The risk was real. The collapse was coming, whether anyone listened or not. The difference between then and now wasn't the analysis, it was the action. At Lehman, he'd written reports and waited for someone else to fix the problem. At Secure Card, he'd picked up the phone and fixed it himself. That was the lesson. Not that institutions always fail, but that you can't wait for them to save you. You have to do the work yourself. One call at a time. One person at a time. One small act of courage that ripples outward into something larger. Michael finished his dinner, washed the dishes, sat on his couch in the quiet apartment he'd called home for 8 years. Tomorrow he'd go back to work. Keep building protocols. Keep fighting scammers. Keep trying to protect people from the predators who saw vulnerability as opportunity. It wasn't the career he'd planned at 25. Not the life he'd imagined when he was climbing the ladder at Lehman Brothers, dreaming of corner offices and 7-figure bonuses. But it was real. It was meaningful. It mattered. And that was enough. Please take a minute to like, comment, and subscribe. We post at least 3 times a week to share tales of true worth.